I don't know even how to introduce Kersti, such a special character, right? But she started with documentary at the age of 34 at the National Film and Television School in Great Britain. She already had by then graduated from English and German in Moscow and modern history in London University. And she's definitely for me like a pioneer and master of observational cinema. And I mean, personally, I found a lot of inspiration in Kersti's classes. So I feel like everything I say about her will fall short. So I'll let Kersti sort of introduce herself a little bit. Thank you, Kersti, so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Ali. I'm really grateful that you invited me, and I'm very happy to meet my friends and all the work you do, because I think when people do quality work, they usually do it for free, as we all know. So I just wish you a lot of success for something what you do. The title Origins, I mean, I actually was asked to make a film about roots a couple of years ago. And I found it very difficult to think about the roots because I felt that I'm more rootless now. I need to be learning to be rootless rather than being rooted. Because I think, you know, we are sort of here travelers on this earth. And if we really only put our roots into the earth, then I think it would be too painful to go away from here. So I actually had this experience when I left to live with my partner in the UK. And then I felt a lot of pain because it was a new surrounding. And I felt that I am not going to put my roots down anymore. I have to find new roots. And that's why when I was asked to make a film about roots, I was quite perplexed, because I would have wanted to make a film more at this stage of my life when it is about rootlessness. But anyway, so I had to solve this paradox. And the idea came from my early childhood. I mean, if you read what I wrote in the magazine, that I grew up on the beach near to this rock. And I think it was probably a very, very powerful impression on me when I was a child. And so I think that when we are very little, we are surrounded by the surroundings we have influence us a lot in life, although we don't pay attention to it. Because I was recently talking to our daughter, and she wants to study glass. And then it came out because she's been in the churches since childhood. Of course, there are a lot of glass, there are a lot of windows, beautiful windows in churches. And I thought, this is interesting. I was surrounded by the sea and by the rocks and by the sand. And then she was actually born in London. And so for her, she was surrounded by these glass windows, which actually change light. And that made me think that how much we really are, how much our origins come from very early childhood. And in some ways, yes, I'd like you to think about it when I talk to you and ask you questions later on. Is that what do you think, how much you have thought about the earliest memories of your childhood and how much you actually take it with you onto your life, unconsciously. As a filmmaker, I have made last 2 films without language, without words, because I feel that although we are human beings and we can express ourselves and our thoughts in words, it also brings a lot of confusion into the world. And so I made really silent, films without words, like Wombstone. And part of the idea is that, we can see things when if you think about it, how long we can't talk. maybe 18 months, we are living in the world when we can't talk. And it doesn't mean that we actually don't see and don't feel and have joy and grief and sadness. But it's just we can't express. And I think also at the end of our lives, a lot of people can't talk as well. So in some ways, the cycle really repeats itself. And as a filmmaker, I think I have really now felt that I don't want to cause more confusion into the world. I just want to express myself through sound and picture. And also another thing, you know, it so happened in my life that I met a priest in Yalta in Ukraine, which is now the focus of the world's attention for sad reasons. But he was the first priest I met. He was a Christian priest, and I'd never been to the church, although I had this awareness of something which is far bigger than us. And so for me, it was very difficult at the age of 27 or 28, actually go to the church and feel that there was so much talk about humans, whereas I felt as a child, I paid so much attention to the trees and flowers and pebbles and rocks. And I felt it was so unfair. Why do people talk only about humans? And I think in some ways, that's why I also wanted to sort of create a film which doesn't have this human talk and human attitude and human explanation, just show things which are animate things. And maybe they have far more meaning for us than we ever realize. So this is why, although, I mean, eventually I actually read a book, Creation Theology, and because I thought that if I married a priest and I love him, I would love to share something what he wanted to be a priest since the age of 7, and he's written the poem. That's why I actually talk to you about him. He suddenly now in the old age, he decided to start writing poems, and they just come out of him. So because he's not doing all this boring committee work. He said he'd never liked to be in committees. Today he's in Iceland, actually. He has a silent day, that's why he's not here. But this crisis, I had to solve this crisis, I mean, with religion. I'm very grateful for it. Because, you know, actually you can only create, you can solve problems through love. If you don't want to hurt the person you love, then you actually have to grow. And one of my friends in Norway was saying that you were sort of like king and queen of a little pond, but then you were actually taken to the ocean. So we really sort of pushed ourselves out of our pond, and then we've grown. And somehow now this film has become, just because Steve actually also put the title to it, Wombstone. So it's almost like a family business now. I think, you know, documentaries, I mean, maybe not documentaries anymore. I think I call film art, is that you really work with people on trust. And I have such strong trust with the cameraman. I know him, he actually shot my graduation film about an old couple in Estonia. We were in this international film school in Beaconsfield. There was one Finn, one Estonian, and I thought that actually, because Finno-Ugric people, they are the only non-Indo-European speaking people in Europe, because all the other languages are connected, like Russian, English, French. They are the Indo-European languages. Finno-Ugric languages are totally different. And for some reason, I thought I understand Finnish without learning it. And it's like Russian and Ukrainian people understand each other without needing to learn. And I love, and actually this trust was formed when I really didn't know him. I said, I'd like you to shoot my graduation film. And when we went to see 5 films together, and then it came out that we just liked the same thing. And that was, I have never talked with him so much about shots, how we are going to shoot him. I totally trust him. And he doesn't work as a cameraman anymore. He works as a color grader. And then basically he said, I can't say no to a film about a rock. So he actually came, and we had only 4 shooting days, 2 in the winter and 2 in the summer. And like Rima, you said, I mean, I wanted just to show these 2 major changes when you have everything is fluid and then it is frozen in the winter, that I felt 2 seasons are enough. And then I just basically, I said what sort of things I definitely need in the film. I said that let's shoot it so that we don't see the size, you know, so that actually people will make it up themselves, the size of the rock. And it's interesting, actually, my Norwegian friend yesterday, she said that she thought that it's enormous. I said, no, you can climb on it. And that it's really, you know, it's knee high in the sea. So I trusted him that he was just shooting and shooting and shooting, and he felt that he also found the site very beautiful. And the film was born really in the editing, and we had to delete unnecessary things. We had more elements, but then we decided we had to delete lots of like visual noise. That it was, and then I also wanted to have, for me, it was, there's the, if you watch it again, there's the last but one shot in the film. That is the most basic sort of Baltic weather, where you have gray sky when you have it's all gray, it's cold and gray, and I wanted it to be in the film so that we are surrounded by the gray weather, so that actually the special things then start playing a lot of role. You know, our life really consists of a lot of gray things, but if we really start seeing it in the background of beauty, then the gray becomes special as well. We need to appreciate it, that life is not only about beautiful moments, it's really about the ordinary gray things which we have to learn to love. This is actually, I'm thankful to Steve, because he thought of this Wombstone, because I think he felt that, and that was, I mean, I didn't plan it or didn't think of it, and lots of things have come out when people see it differently. Their fantasy works, that when we are in the womb, we have no understanding of the size, yet we are living. For 9 months, we are living in the womb, in the darkness, and we can hear. And then we have no idea how big the space is. And I think, you know, this sort of, you know, shooting the rock so that you could imagine it is very big, very small, is a bit sort of like a child in the womb. And that's where this sort of idea has come from, why it is the Wombstone.
This film is made in a very particular context. You know, you're asked to make a film about roots for Estonians' 100 independence celebration, right? And so there's that context. But I also know that by the time that you were asked this, something was taking place in Estonia with these very far-right nationalist groups taking place. And I find it very interesting that you chose to do a film about roots in the context of Estonian independence, in this very like that has this very like institutional sort of feeling, you know, and then you come and say something that I feel it's also political, that you're saying that no one is from nowhere in a way, you know, that how can you say who's from where? And I was wondering if there's something about that, because it's a silent film, but it also makes its statements in a way.
Thank you for asking this, because, you know, that was interesting. At that time, you know, there was this refugee crisis, and now, of course, we have, I mean, what moves us a lot here, because, you know, now our neighbor is in war, and you know, we basically really feel very much, especially during the first week, we felt very much that, you know, that we could be bombed next week. I even asked my English daughter, my half English, half Estonian daughter, would you like to go back to London? And she actually said, I'll go to the place where the beach is and I'll start growing chicken and goats during the war. Fortunately, I hope we won't have the war. But that was the time when I was thinking about what sort of film to do. There was a Syrian refugee crisis in Europe. And then in some ways, erratic boulder, this rock, is a refugee. It's a refugee on the coast. It's not a native of Estonia. Actually, it moved here during the Ice Age. And so that was for me, actually, also, I thought that here it is, we're talking about these national symbols. And I think they even were talking erratic boulder should be the national symbol of Estonia. And I was very excited, because I thought, so we make a refugee into a national symbol. So it just shows, you know, how, you know, there are jokes in these national symbols, you know. Some countries have birds, fortunately, so they think rock doesn't move, but rock will move as well. And that's sort of, so that is actually my statement. I was very much aware of it, and I thought if someone really wants to find out, they will find out it's not a national symbol. But I actually remembered something, you know, something funny as well. We have a very small village there, maybe 300 people live there, and I showed this film in our sort of village hall, and lots of people came because they knew that I was filming the film. And then one guy said, I think you must have run out of money because you had no money left for the words. I said, oh, I'm so happy that you said that. What a strange thing was that a week later he was dead, and I thought these were his last words. So he was a lovely man. I mean, but it was so interesting that he made a statement, and now he stays with me forever. It's just he immortalized himself, where he said that you run out of money, you had no money left for words. Which just shows how life works, that we think that we do something, we leave something behind, and people very much want to leave something behind, but I don't know, I feel more like Zen. I'm very much, I like Zen saying, and I like the idea that if we go, we should go like a snowflake, so that there's just even not a big pond stays after a snowflake, just a touch. And we are really a touch in this universe, which is, and we shouldn't take ourselves so seriously. I think if we could just be more light and then think, okay, let's make boulders into national symbols, then a boulder has a last laugh and moves again soon in a few thousand of years. So I always actually, I'd love to have some humor in it, but I can only have humor when I talk about it.
There's one thing that I want to comment on, which is the silence that you mentioned before. You know, silence, I believe, is part of our language as well. We don't use it that often and lately in these days. The one that talks the more is the one that gets the more attention, and that's how it works now. But nature has this way to talk to us that we are trying to figure out still, I guess. And I think your film, at least me, it put me in this state of trying to not rationalize, but just live this moment that you are presenting me with the elements that it has. And I felt like transported to this scenes. So I do believe that silence speaks more than sometimes than a sentence, or I don't believe we need to put you need to add any text at the end, because actually it made me feel and it made me question those elements that are in my landscape that have been here for a while. So you know, this is happening everywhere. This is something that the earth is, I don't know, I have a river that crosses my next to my house, and it's been there for more than I can imagine. And if you go to the regions of this river, you pretty much end up in some other geological like catastrophe that caused like this whole what we know as Costa Rica today. So all these reflections wouldn't be limited if I had like I think like a frame, you know, something's telling me, okay, this is this and that, you know. So I think the power of silence in this film is, and it's not silence, you know, it's just not words, because we have sounds, and sounds also communicate. So I think it's really interesting, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you again for the film and being here.
Yeah, I was just agreeing, I think, with Pablo. I love the fact that the rock wasn't pinned in a place, a time, even though it is in your life, but as an image, it was mysterious. It could be in another planet. It could be, I don't know, anywhere in the world, although it is very specific. I just love just the fact of the rock and the beautiful sea, which could be an ocean. I don't know, it just had a kind of universal connection beyond a label, if you like. Although I think knowing it's part of your story and your childhood is also very beautiful. But I think to have it on the screen at the end, I don't know, like I can imagine being torn about that dilemma, but for me it was just mysterious, this amazing rock that I thought was a mountain. When you say, you know, that was so, it was just so magical hearing that. Thank you, I loved it in you. Thank you.
Thank you. Because one thing as well, why I actually didn't put this location of the village, you know, and, you know, this is my village rock, is that I thought that when actually we watched this film, whether we're in Costa Rica, in US, in Canada, wherever you are all from Ireland, that we've seen the rock, the sea, the sky, the sun. I mean, this is the common thing for all of us, so that actually we inhabit the earth. It talks to everyone. And in that way, that's the roots for me. This is the roots, is the earth. And then, you know, I mean, just then rootlessness is when we are away from the earth. We are partly going to the, we will be going into the earth, or in ashes, or however people decide to when we finish this journey. But we don't quite know what actually happens to the soul. I mean, I would never want to give in any explanations. I'm not interested what happens after my last breath. But it doesn't mean that I have no mystery. I'm curious, but somehow I feel, you know, I leave it. And I think I wanted to capture this openness in silence, so that everybody can actually work it out for themselves. That this you can it works for art therapy, and there was actually a teenager who is a sort of has a very difficult family background and has a lot of things happening in her life. She'd actually asked the grandmother to call me and thank me for the film because she wanted to see it again, and that it really helped to calm her down. And that there is maybe then, you know, in this very deep origins, what we have, that this is so calming to us when we are probably, you know, starting from the womb, that we really have no understanding how deeply this silence goes, and that you can use it in art therapy. We are actually planning a session for art therapists that they would start using this film in art therapy, but you could test it out with some people. But I would love to know how it works in art therapy. I've never planned to do it like that, but now I see that other people tell me that. So when you have little is more, I believe it now. You know, I teach my students, you know, in the graduation film, they want to put the history of the whole world, themselves, their parents, and, you know, what happens to them into 20 minutes. And I say, oh, please just, you know, delete most of the things, just leave one theme, that less is more. And I actually think, you know, in some ways, even with this film, small film, that maybe these questions I had, should I have this, should I write where it is, what it is? And another one, I decided to put Wombstone at the end of the film, because I thought, how on earth do if you actually give the viewer a title, then you can't go into meditation. Then, you know, first 30 seconds, you're thinking, oh, what is it, Wombstone? So I had to put the title at the end, but there is no written rule about it that the title needs to come at the beginning. You know, which was also, you know, it took me a long, long time to decide, can I really not start the film without the title? You see these sort of little questions in a short film, you have to decide it. But I've learned something. It's much harder to make a short film than a longer film, because in a longer film, your mistakes somehow, you know, they evaporate in the length. You forget about them. But if it's a short form, then, you know, once you have a really sort of something which stops the flow and it's an obstacle, then the meditation stops. Then you have to start again. So it is very hard to make a short form film.
I was actually thinking that I'd like to connect what you're talking about with a little bit of our purpose at Wimblu, because in a way, what we've been trying to do is like, how do we speak about our relationship with landscapes, with earth, without telling people what to do or what is right or what is wrong, you know, because we feel that there's a lot of this, you know, that what do we need to do in terms of our relationship to earth? You know, there's a lot of instructions, there's a lot of do that, don't do that. There's a lot of emergency, like, you know, urgency of like how we need to act now and how the house is on fire. And this becomes very overwhelming, you know, and it sort of rips like our experience of being on earth, which is really like the base, you know, that our ecological crisis, it's really a crisis of relationship, of how we are relating to the places that we are and that we inhabit. And so I'm thinking, you know, about the role of creative nonfiction, and especially these sort of meditational pieces, you know, that allow the viewer to come in their own terms and to reflect, like Pablo was saying, on their own relationship, you know, to their landscapes and to the places they live in. And, you know, I thought maybe you could like say a little bit about this, because you've been working for so long in documentary, and I'm pretty sure you know what documentary can do in that terms, you know, especially this kind of documentary. How can it open us to a relationship with the places that we we're from and that we're off, not necessarily from.
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for that. Thank you for this comment. One thing is that actually in film art, or actually in art in general, because we have a lot of artists here, singers and filmmakers and writers. What actually makes any art form work is when you have a relationship with that subject matter, so that basically your love is going to be on the screen. And some people, when you're teaching students, they don't believe in it. But now we have this very clear example. They are doing a graduation film at the moment, and 8 out of 10 finally said that I don't want to make this film, it's wrong. And I said, so then don't do it. If you actually are finding this subject matter boring, the viewers will find it boring as well. So you actually have to have a very strong relationship with the subject you're filming. So I have a relationship with this landscape from birth, and that's and actually the cameraman is born in a very similar place in some way, nature. So he has a strong relationship to nature, and that's what makes the film. If we actually didn't, both of us didn't see that that awe of nature, then actually this film wouldn't work, because in commercials there are beautiful shots of sunsets and sunrises, but they leave us cold because they are sort of technically doing the shots. They know exactly how to do it, but it doesn't leave an impression. Only sort of strong feeling and relationship leaves something on the screen. So I think relationship is the basis of it all. And if you have a relationship with rocks, with trees, with flowers, pebbles, or then when you take a photo of it or you write a song about it, then it starts vibrating. It resonates to other people because they recognize it. So it's all this actually that works. And it's not only technical things, because imagine, if actually all the people, because people were saying that films will stop existing because everybody has a mobile phone and everybody can make a film. It's like people were thinking, that it's like everybody has a pen and paper, but not everybody's a poet. So why is it so that if we have a mobile phone, then the world is full of films? They're not. They're just shots without any feeling in it. Oh, I need to just take a little memory, that I've been with Big Ben behind me, and you see the world, of tourists, how they actually take photographs in front of these points of these tourist places, but they're not films. You all had to probably sit through these family albums when they show you all the pictures. And then sometimes one actually cries out, look at me, because there's something special has happened. So it's all based on relationship. Was that an answer? I don't know. When I saw The Rock for the first time, maybe, not even 1 year old, there was no mediator between me and The Rock. No one was telling me, look, this is a rock, it's a refugee. I actually had such a strong experience. It's like falling in love. When you actually fall in love, it is instantaneous. Mm-hmm. No one is saying, when you fall in love, we need someone to tell you, only this is now what's happening. We are so I actually was looking at this film from the point of view of the rock. And I thought rock can't really communicate. So I actually went to the side of the rock. That's why that's the decision. But hopefully, I mean, it's like, you know, if you watch it many times, I think my family has seen it many times, and it of course works in the cinema. It is really an experience, you know, it's on a small screen. It is such a, you know, it's not the full experience. You start noticing things. And I've had, you know, the people who've seen it many times, they say every time they actually think of a totally new thing. So I think in some ways it works, but you know, you win and lose, Rima.
Yeah.
You make it clear in one aspect and then in the other aspect you lose. I have been really thinking more and more about this from the point of view of the rock. I think sometimes we should really sort of switch our consciousness towards these things which are existing there next to us, who can't communicate, but they are communicating. And I think we are so, that's why I talked to you at the beginning, how hard it was for me, you know, that Christianity only talks about just sort of like man-centered world. I think I trust the viewer. I mean, I have quite high expectations of the viewer, and I in some ways, like in poetry, I feel that, you know, in poetry, you know, we don't need to explain why this verse comes like this. What did the poet think? You know, we somehow expect it, that it is a poem. And then, you know, it's like in poetry, quite often there are actually poems without the title. And we go into this realm and we accept it. Yes.
It's so interesting what Paul just said, and I'm thinking, well, that the film, knowing the context of the film, makes it a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more political, a little bit more like, you know, it has all this, yes, aggressiveness that the film doesn't show, you know. So it's so interesting to know it, and this is part of this dynamic that we are pushing from Wimblu. But yeah, the film by itself is meditative, is poetry, is passive. But knowing, like, going down the film and knowing all these elements and all the context, and the reason why you didn't add words, the reason why you chosen to do it about a rock, it makes it really, really political and also aggressive in a way, you know. So I find it really, really interesting, and I think Eden wants to talk. Go ahead, Eden.
Hi, everybody. I'm kind of amused that the issue about knowing the location is so important, and for me it's not about that. And I want to guide the conversation to another kind of stuff. When I see the invitation for today, the main title of the event was ethnographic cinema. So I'm really interested how to do an ethnographic film about a rock.
I mean, Alessandra, you have actually studied anthropology, visual anthropology. You can give an answer to that.
Traditionally, ethnographic film has always used this language of observational cinema. But I mean, if I could bring any answer from my experience doing an ethnographic cinema program in Tallinn, is that the thing about observational cinema is that it offers that direct experience, exactly, you know, and there's this very interesting interview, Lucian Taylor. So he's a filmmaker, and he says that there's nothing more ethnographic and empirical than a sensorial film, because it allows the viewer to come in direct contact in a way with the experience, you know, and it lets an experience arise from the contact between the viewer and the film, and then it becomes a relationship in itself in a way. So I I would like to listen to what Kersti thinks, but the thing about doing observational film for me is this, is that it allows sort of a direct experience that it's not mediated by comment, you know? And then later, later as this conversation is touching upon, is that if this direct experience touches you, you know, if you're interested by it, then you start to find the other layers. You start to look for the other layers, you know, because you become interested in this experience, and then you start to sort of find meaning in it. So I think that it was a little bit of a switch, at least in anthropology studies, to go from a film that was showing you the images with a commentator telling you everything that you needed to know about the culture that you were observing, to go to this other sort of cinema that it's more, it opens up questions rather than like giving up all the answers in a way.
I'm actually very happy about this thing that it happened now, because if we talk about direct experience, because in this film, I mean, the sound is very important, but of course here it's not a direct experience, you know, the sound is totally changed. I had a very talented sound designer, a Finnish sound designer who lives in Estonia. And he told me at the beginning when he watched the material and I mean the cut, he said that, you know, this film doesn't need the natural sound and it doesn't need music. It almost needs a soundtrack of its own. And so it's all recreated sound. So in that way, it's not direct. So this is actually, I think, the biggest work, you know, or the the sort of human interference comes with sound. But I wonder, how is it with, yes, that's, I actually would like to hear your opinion about the sound. Did you notice it?
Yeah.
Did
Just
it
to add,
irritate you?
I just wanted to add one thing, that it's like what you're saying, it's true. It's not a direct experience of reality. It's a direct experience of the film.
Yeah.
And I really like this. There's this writer, Vivian Sobchak. She calls these sort of films an experience of an experience. So it's like for me, that quality, that what makes it an ethnographic quality in a way is that the audience can come and have a direct experience of the film, not necessarily of reality or how it was, but the film in itself becomes an experience. You know, and so you expect the audience to come with their own bodies, with their own experiences, with their own memories, with their own histories, with their own culture, to the experience of the film, and not necessarily to the experience of reality, as anthropology once pretended to do. But it's actually very impossible to, you know, to give people the direct experience of reality through mediating it. Yeah. Eden, please.
Yeah, to continue with my provocation in a good way, this is a provocating question, but in a good way, because I was thinking about Trinity Minha during these days and about what she's saying with words and with just montage about ethnographic film. And she's making some reflections about ethnographic film through ethnographic film. So I want to ask to Kersti more about this, about your film. How do you choose to manage time? This important issue. I mean, Trinity Minha is using his work to thought about his own work, right? And you, how are you using film to reflect about, or to make some reflections about film and about time? Because the stones are really hard and their time is pretty different to us. And I can understand that you are trying maybe to understand that time, but how film is helping you to make this observation, this research about time, if it is a fact for you, if it's interesting you to.
I mean, I actually thank you for asking me that question, because Andrei Tarkovsky has written one main book about his filmmaking, which is called Sculpting in Time. And filmmaking is really making, dealing with time, where we stop time. And, you know, that's the only art form where we actually can recreate time. You know, we don't need to think about it consciously. It just happens. We are really making an imprint of time, and then we can rewind it. I don't think that any filmmakers think about time in that way, because that is already the origin of filmmaking.
Helen is saying that regarding the sound, I was interested by the track having a metallic vibration. I love the wave sound. I want to see and hear the film again.
I mean, thank you for, I mean, it is very, I mean, yes, I think in some ways sound is 60% of the film is sound. And 40%, I mean, it's not percentages, actually, are never true. But anyway, let's talk about proportions. I believe the sound comes first, because when we are in the womb, we hear for 9 years, but we don't see for 9 months. So that's why sound comes first. And sound for this film was really actually a very, very interesting work. How to deal with the sound. Because we put elements into it. We added the sound of the fire when we have the, you know, if you actually, there's a cracking of the fire, we took it down a little bit so that it was very interesting, a long process to create that sound. So although I'm happy if you didn't notice it too much, you know, but yes, this and then how much you put natural sound into it. There's actually a lot of work has gone into sound. In film, of course, you know, sound should be like that you don't notice it, but it actually adds something. If we notice the sound, then I think then it is an interruption. I have seen one beautiful film, a fiction film, which was so subtle. And in the credits, end credits, they put such bad music, very loud. And it really destroyed for me the whole experience, because they, you know, it was the insensitivity of the sounds suddenly in the end credits. Because we notice things when they are sort of like intervention. They should really, you know, you shouldn't pay too much attention, but then when you pay attention, then, you know, maybe you will listen that how it's being created, the sound.
To me, the sound worked very well, because it was helping the experience, but without distracting in any way or feeling unnatural. And I think that's, the sound helps to make the film timeless. You know, and that's one reason not to have anything there political or anything written, because it works for all times, you know, and at different time you may think, well, this really works for what's going on in this world. And then when you give a talk, you know, you can bring those elements into discussion of the film. For me, this film had a special meaning, because I was born in the city, but as a child, I'm from Lithuania, Vilnius, Lithuania. But every summer we went to the sea, to the Baltic Sea. So for me, and I think for anyone who is born around the Baltic area, even just watching the sea that I haven't seen so long now, since leaving and living in the West, So it was also observing that water that I used to swim in as a child all the time. So it had very special meaning for me too. And I thought that it kind of goes beyond Estonian framework. I think it works for the Baltic area. I think anyone who spent time by the Baltic Sea, and I remember that gray shot that you referred to, because I remember going swimming and it was freezing. And our dad, who loved swimming, in all weather, including winter, would drag us into the water, and I was the only one who would follow him, and my older brother and sister didn't want to go in. So I think that film has additional special meanings to people who live in the area and are familiar. But I can't remember seeing, the light on the waves, the sunsets. It was kind of like seeing it anew, something that was so familiar to me. And so I just think it's kind of a timeless piece. And perhaps the less you'll say or explain for people, the more timeless it will be.
Yes, it just shows this has been a very useful experience. So better not to talk. Otherwise, we need to start putting it into categories. What sort of film is it? Which actually happens at festivals. Is it an anthropological film festival and ethnographic film festival? Is it poetic documentary? Is it auteur film? Is it a documentary? Basically, documentary festivals, I've been saying that I'm not a documentary filmmaker anymore. I've just sort of left them, and I'm quite happy about it, actually, that they have expelled me. It's always good if you're actually expelled from somewhere. I think that is a very positive thing. But one thing, what I would like to say, I'm very grateful for this session, because this film has been in 10 different film festivals around the world. But it was during Corona time, and film festivals are great celebrations for filmmakers. This is our sort of great moment when you meet other filmmakers. You are in the cinema, everything goes dark, and you are there, and then you meet other filmmakers, because but in Zoom and in internet, you have such a small screen. And this film hasn't really had a sort of proper screening in the cinema. I mean, I had a premiere, but not at festivals, So this is our festival today, international festival with 9 people. So, but it would be great if we could see it on a big screen. That is, maybe your word becomes flesh when you say it out. So now I actually sent my wish to the universe, saying I'd like to have a proper screening in the cinema.
And so I just wanted to close that maybe we all take this question home. If we were asked to make a film about our roots, or about roots in general, like what would be that non-human element that we would reach out to answer this question? Because I think this is the beautiful exercise that Kersti is doing, and it's a beautiful invitation for the viewers as well to reflect on that, and also what's the state of that place and that element right now. Because for Kersti, it's a rock that it's still standing and might be standing there for lots of coming years,
Thousands.
Yeah, but maybe it's a forest that it isn't there anymore, and there's grief related to that roots, or maybe it's something that it's calling you to defend it in a way, to protect it. So whatever it is, I think it's a beautiful invitation to reflect that what is it, what's that landscape that has made our own inner landscape, and that has invited us into this world, and that has determined our relationship to it.
If you want to support our project, you can share this episode, visit our digital magazine wimblu.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our Patreon community where you can access exclusive content starting at $3 a month. Your support allows us to create and share content that reimagines a fair and healthy world for all life forms.